What if the very birthplace of agriculture, the Fertile Crescent, holds the key to feeding humanity in a climate-changed future? This ancient land, facing unprecedented environmental challenges, is pioneering solutions. We're diving into how cutting-edge technology and forgotten wisdom could transform farming and secure our global food supply. The story of the Fertile Crescent has always been a story of beginnings. Long before the rise of kingdoms, empires, and written memory, people living along the Tigris, Euphrates, and the Levantine plains discovered something that changed humanity forever: the ability to cultivate the earth. Wheat and barley swayed gently in winds that carried the promise of stability and abundance. Sheep and goats moved across green pastures that seemed endless. Villages grew into towns, and towns into sophisticated societies that mastered irrigation, seed selection, and soil care. The Fertile Crescent blossomed into the world's first agricultural heartland, offering a blueprint for civilization itself. But the story that once started with promise is now entering a new chapter, one defined by challenges that ancient people never had to imagine. Climate change has shifted the balance that sustained these lands for 10,000 years. As temperatures rise, rivers recede, and seasons drift into unfamiliar patterns, the region now stands on the edge of a transformation that could determine its future. The people who live here feel this transformation intimately. In the plains of Iraq, farmers recall how winter rains once arrived predictably, softening the earth and announcing the start of planting season. Today, these rains come late, sometimes not at all, or they appear suddenly in storms that destroy newly planted fields. In northern Syria, once green hillsides struggle with dryness that cracks the soil. In southeastern Turkey, the snowmelt that traditionally fed rivers in spring is becoming inconsistent, disrupting the timing of irrigation. Iran, too, faces intensifying droughts that strain water resources already stretched by growing populations. These changes are not isolated events, but pieces of a broader pattern that has gradually reshaped the environmental identity of the Fertile Crescent. The challenge begins with temperature. Average annual warmth has increased steadily, turning summers into long, punishing seasons that scorch crops before they fully develop. Wheat, one of the region's most ancient and cherished staples, struggles to thrive under extreme heat. Barley fields suffer the same fate. Fruit trees blossom too early or too late, losing their rhythm with the seasons. For farmers, this is not merely an inconvenience, but an existential threat. Everything they know, when to plant, how much to irrigate, which crops will yield enough to feed their families, depends on stable seasonal cycles. When those cycles break down, the entire agricultural tradition inherited from ancestors becomes uncertain. But heat's only one part of the story. Rainfall, once the region's lifeline, has grown unreliable. Some years bring prolonged droughts that leave the soil powder dry. Other years bring rains so intense that they wash away seeds and erode fertile land. The Tigris and Euphrates, rivers that gave birth to Mesopotamia, fluctuate wildly. In dry seasons, their water levels fall to historic lows, exposing riverbeds and complicating irrigation. In flood seasons, water spills over embankments, drowning fields and damaging canals. Farmers, who rely on these rivers as arteries of life, must now navigate an unpredictable system that threatens both scarcity and excess. These environmental shifts also influence the soil itself. Fertility declines when land faces too much heat or too little moisture. Salt accumulates in areas where irrigation water evaporates quickly under the sun. In parts of Iraq and Syria, salinization threatens thousands of hectares of once productive land. Soil becomes harder, less able to support roots, and more likely to blow away in dust storms. The very earth that nurtured the first crops in human history now struggles to support the plants that depend on it. Yet despite these challenges, the people of the Fertile Crescent have not given up. Their resilience is rooted in thousands of years of adaptation. History shows that this region has endured cycles of drought, flood, and political upheaval. Empires have risen and fallen, but the land has always found a way to sustain its people. Today, this legacy inspires communities, scientists, and policymakers to search for solutions that blend ancient knowledge with modern innovation. Across villages and agricultural districts, farmers are experimenting with new crop varieties engineered to withstand heat and drought. Some are turning to traditional grains that had fallen out of favor but are naturally hardy. Others are modifying planting schedules, shifting them earlier or later to match new seasonal patterns. Irrigation systems, once dependent on open canals, are being replaced with drip systems that conserve water. Governments and NGOs encourage reforestation efforts to restore vegetation that anchors soil and moderates local climate. In some areas, old water harvesting techniques such as stone terraces and earthen catchments used by ancestors are being revived and combined with scientific research. The transformation is not only physical, but deeply social. Farmers who once worked independently now form cooperatives to share resources, equipment, and information. Universities collaborate with local communities to test sustainable techniques directly in fields rather than in isolated laboratories. Women, whose agricultural knowledge has often been overlooked, are emerging as key voices in planning and decision-making. Young people, many of whom migrated to cities in search of work, are beginning to return to farms, drawn by new opportunities in climate-resilient agriculture. These social dynamics are reshaping the rural landscape as much as climate change reshapes the physical environment. Still, the path forward is far from simple. Conflict and instability in parts of the region make long-term planning difficult. Infrastructure damaged by war complicates irrigation and transportation. Economic crises limit access to seeds, fertilizers, and machinery. Water disputes between countries further complicate efforts to manage rivers sustainably. Climate change, though global in nature, interacts with local political and economic realities, creating a complex blend of challenges that no single solution can address.
But within this complexity lies an opportunity. The people of the Fertile Crescent possess a unique advantage, a deep historical understanding of how agriculture can adapt. From ancient irrigation canals to crop rotation systems that maintained soil fertility, their ancestors developed techniques that allowed communities to survive in harsh conditions. Today, these traditions provide a foundation upon which modern science can build. The fusion of old and new knowledge has the potential to guide the region toward a more resilient future. Scientists studying the region emphasize that the key to survival is not resisting change, but learning to work within it. Climate models predict further warming and increased variability in rainfall, but they also identify microclimates, small areas sheltered by hills, forests, or water bodies that could serve as hubs for resilient farming. Conservationists advocate protecting wetlands, which act as natural buffers against drought and flood. Engineers explore solar-powered irrigation pumps to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. These ideas, tested and refined through collaboration, offer hope that the Fertile Crescent may once again pioneer agricultural innovations that inspire the world. As the first chapter of this story closes, the region stands on the threshold of a new era. The challenges are undeniable, but so is the determination of the people who call this land home. Their relationship with the earth is older than history itself, woven into the identity of every community. Even as climate change reshapes their environment, they continue to plant, harvest, innovate, and hope. The future of the Fertile Crescent will not be defined solely by the threats it faces, but by the choices its people make today. Their resilience, born from generations of adaptation, may yet turn a vulnerable landscape into a model of agricultural strength in a changing world.
The shifting climate of the Fertile Crescent has not only altered the physical environment, but has also disrupted the cultural rhythm that defined farming life for millennia. Generations of farmers grew up learning the calendar of the earth from their elders, when the first winter winds would arrive, when the soil would soften, when the river would rise, and when the harvest should begin. These patterns were once as reliable as the sunrise, but in recent decades, they have become unpredictable.
Planting seasons no longer align with ancestral knowledge, leaving farmers uncertain about when to begin the cycle that sustains their families. Wheat sometimes germinates too early due to unexpected warmth, only to be struck down by sudden cold snaps. Conversely, late-season heat waves burn crops that have not yet matured. This irregularity has reshaped agricultural decision-making, transforming what was once a familiar rhythm into a sequence of difficult choices. As temperatures rise, evaporation increases, drawing moisture from the soil and forcing farmers to irrigate more frequently. But increased irrigation is not always possible, especially in areas where water scarcity is already severe. The Tigris and Euphrates, once symbols of abundance, now reveal rocky beds during dry months, exposing the fragility of systems that depend on them. In parts of Iraq, canals run shallow, limiting the flow to distant fields. In Syria, infrastructure damage worsens the situation, leaving some farms entirely dependent on unpredictable rainfall. Iran faces an even more severe crisis, where decades of groundwater extraction have depleted aquifers faster than they can be replenished. Wells that once reached water at shallow depths now must be drilled hundreds of meters deeper, straining both finances and equipment. These realities force farmers to make impossible decisions, whether to reduce cultivation, switch to less water-intensive crops, or abandon farming altogether. Yet despite these pressures, communities are not standing idle. Adaptation has become a necessity, and farmers are actively rethinking the crops they grow. Varieties of wheat and barley, traditionally favored for their high yield, are being replaced with hardier strains that can withstand extreme heat and require less water. Some communities are returning to ancient grains like emmer and einkorn, crops that sustained early civilizations in the region and remain resilient under harsh conditions. Lentils, chickpeas, and other legumes, plants that naturally enrich the soil with nitrogen, are also gaining popularity because they survive better in dry climates. This shift in crop selection reflects both a respect for ancestral knowledge and an embrace of scientific research that supports climate-resilient agriculture.
Water management is becoming an equally important focus. Farmers who once relied on flooding fields through open canals are adopting more controlled irrigation methods. Drip irrigation, which delivers water directly to plant roots, is increasingly used, especially in areas where water is scarce. Though this technology requires initial investment, many farmers find that the long-term benefits outweigh the cost. Water loss through evaporation is drastically reduced, and fields remain productive even during dry months. Some communities are experimenting with rainwater harvesting, capturing seasonal rains in underground cisterns or earthen basins that slowly release water into the soil. These methods revive ancient traditions used by early agricultural societies in the region, proving once again that old knowledge can serve modern needs. Climate change has also intensified the threat of pests and diseases. Warmer temperatures allow insects to survive for longer seasons or spread into areas where they were previously unknown. Wheat rust, a fungal disease that devastates harvests, thrives under humid conditions created by sudden, unseasonal rains. Locust swarms, historically rare in some areas, have reappeared with alarming frequency. To combat these threats, farmers and researchers are collaborating more than ever before. Agricultural institutes test disease-resistant seeds, while local farmers observe patterns on the ground and report them through community networks. Mobile technology, once rare in rural areas, now serves as a vital communication tool, allowing farmers to learn about new threats in real time and respond quickly. The challenge of rising temperatures extends beyond crops. It affects livestock as well. Herds of sheep and goats, central to the identity and economy of many rural communities, face heat stress that reduces their productivity. Pastures that once fed animals year-round now dry up earlier in the season, forcing herders to buy supplemental feed. In mountainous regions of Turkey and Iran, seasonal grazing routes have become harder to follow as snow patterns shift and water sources disappear. Some communities have begun constructing shaded shelters for animals or planting drought-resistant grasses to stabilize grazing lands.
These interventions, though small, help safeguard livelihoods dependent on animal husbandry. Urbanization adds another layer of complexity. As conditions in rural areas grow harsher, many young people migrate to cities seeking stable income. This migration reduces the agricultural workforce, leaving older generations to manage farms that once required entire families. Fields left uncultivated deteriorate quickly. Soil erodes, irrigation systems fall into disrepair, and local ecosystems lose their balance. Yet the relationship between cities and agricultural regions is not purely negative. Urban demand for local, sustainably grown food is increasing, creating new opportunities for farmers willing to innovate. Markets in Baghdad, Damascus, Erbil, and Tehran now feature produce labeled as climate resilient or organically grown, offering better prices and motivating farmers to adapt environmental practices.
Conflict has shaped the region for decades, and climate change exacerbates tensions over resources. Water disputes between countries sharing the Tigris and Euphrates create political challenges that complicate cooperative solutions. Dams built upstream reduce water flow downstream, leading to accusations of unfair usage. These political dynamics highlight a core truth: climate resilience cannot be achieved by one nation alone. The rivers flow across borders, and so do the challenges. Only regional cooperation, through fair sharing of water, joint environmental monitoring, and shared agricultural research, can create stability. Encouragingly, in some areas, cross-border projects have begun to emerge, with researchers from different countries collaborating to study drought patterns or develop shared seed banks. In rural villages, the social fabric is also evolving. Women, traditionally involved in household farming tasks, now play increasingly central roles in decision-making as families adapt to new realities. Their knowledge of seed storage, food preservation, and small-scale irrigation becomes invaluable. Community workshops led by women farmers have begun spreading techniques such as mulching, composting, and home-based water recycling. These small-scale innovations collectively strengthen resilience at the community level. Meanwhile, young entrepreneurs introduce digital tools, soil moisture sensors, weather monitoring apps, and low-cost solar pumps to modernize farming practices. The merging of traditional and modern knowledge reflects a new generation's commitment to preserving the region's agricultural legacy. Despite the challenges, signs of hope emerge in unexpected places. In parts of Turkey, farmers are reviving ancient terracing systems that reduce soil erosion on hillsides and capture water more effectively. In northern Iraq, pilot projects using treated wastewater for irrigation show promising results. In Iran, scientists develop salt-tolerant crops suited for areas suffering from soil salinization. These innovations demonstrate that while climate change imposes severe constraints, it also encourages creativity and resourcefulness born from necessity. What becomes increasingly clear is that adaptation is not a single decision, but an ongoing process. Farmers do not change their entire system at once. They experiment gradually, observing outcomes and adjusting practices year by year. Some methods succeed, while others fail, but the cumulative knowledge grows. Communities become laboratories of resilience, testing what works in real conditions rather than relying solely on theory. This approach mirrors the ancient development of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent, where early farmers experimented with wild grains until cultivation became reliable. Just as the past evolved through trial and error, so too will the future. As this transformation continues, agriculture becomes more than a profession. It becomes a symbol of identity and resistance. To farm in the Fertile Crescent today is to defy the pressures of climate, conflict, economics, and uncertainty. It is to protect a heritage older than written history, and to insist that the land remains not just productive, but meaningful. Families who have lived on the same soil for generations believe deeply that their connection to the earth cannot be broken by adversity. Their daily labor,
planting seeds in cracked soil, repairing irrigation channels, testing new crop varieties, reflects a determination that transcends the hardships they face. The landscape of the Fertile Crescent may be changing, but its people continue to write a story of resilience. Through adaptation, cooperation, and innovation, they confront the challenges of a warming climate with the same spirit that once allowed their ancestors to transform wild land into the cradle of civilization. While uncertainties remain, the foundation is clear. Resilience begins with understanding change, accepting it, and shaping new paths forward. The journey of adaptation is only beginning, and the decisions made today will define the next era of agriculture in this ancient, storied region. The reality of climate change across the Fertile Crescent has forced scientists, farmers, and policymakers to confront a question that previous generations never had to ask. How can agriculture survive when the environment that once nurtured it continues to transform at a pace never seen in recorded history? This question has led to a surge in scientific research across the region, creating an unprecedented alliance between modern laboratories and traditional farmlands. The search for resilience has pushed researchers to study everything, from genetic traits of ancient cereal grains to the hydrology of river systems, to find pathways that might secure food production in the decades ahead. As the land becomes less predictable, the solutions must become more creative, drawing on both innovation and memory of the past. This scientific awakening is visible in universities and research centers from Ankara to Baghdad, from Tehran to Aleppo. Scientists who once focused solely on crop yield now focus on survival traits, heat tolerance, drought resistance, salinity endurance. In Turkey, researchers study land races of wheat, varieties that have evolved naturally over centuries in local environments. These land races, though less productive than modern hybrids, contain genetic resilience that could become crucial in future climates. In Iraq, biologists collect seeds from remote villages where farmers still cultivate ancient grains rarely found in commercial markets. These seeds are cataloged and stored in seed banks, preserving biodiversity that could serve as an insurance policy against future crop failures. But research does not remain confined to laboratories. Scientists conduct field trials in partnership with farmers, planting experimental plots under local conditions to understand how new varieties behave in real environments. These collaborations break traditional boundaries between academic knowledge and practical experience. Farmers, who understand the land intimately, offer insights that data alone cannot provide. How soil reacts after heavy rains, how pests migrate during warm spells, how winds affect pollination. In return, scientists introduce new techniques that farmers might never have attempted on their own. This reciprocity strengthens both sides, forging a relationship built on shared responsibility for the future. Water remains the most critical component of this future. Without reliable water sources, no agricultural practice can succeed. Yet the region's rivers are under immense pressure from climate change, population growth, and upstream damming. This has spurred research into efficient irrigation systems that use water sparingly without compromising crop growth. Engineers have designed low-pressure drip systems that distribute water evenly across fields using minimal energy. Solar-powered pumps reduce dependency on fuel, allowing even remote villages to maintain irrigation during dry months. In Iran, experiments with subsurface irrigation, burying porous pipes below the soil surface, show promise in reducing evaporation while delivering consistent moisture to plant roots. Hydrologists also study aquifers to understand how groundwater can be protected. Over-extraction has led to rapid depletion, causing land subsidence in some regions and increasing the salinity of remaining water. To counteract this, scientists explore managed aquifer recharge systems, directing excess floodwater into underground basins where it can replenish natural storage. This concept reflects a modern reinterpretation of ancient water harvesting structures that once dotted the region. By combining contemporary hydrological science with historical design principles, researchers hope to restore a balance that aggressive development disrupted. Technology is transforming farming in ways previous generations could never have imagined. Remote sensing tools monitor crop health from satellites, identifying stress patterns before they are visible to the human eye. Drones equipped with thermal cameras detect variations in soil moisture, guiding farmers to irrigate only where necessary. Weather prediction models incorporate regional climate data to alert farmers of upcoming heat waves or storms, allowing them to adjust planting schedules or protect vulnerable crops. Even mobile phones, ubiquitous across rural communities, have become vital instruments. Apps provide real-time information on temperature, humidity, and pest movement, enabling farmers to make informed decisions despite unpredictable conditions. But while scientific and technological advances offer hope, they also highlight a growing divide between communities with resources and those without. Wealthier farmers, or those supported by government programs, can adopt new technologies quickly, while poorer communities struggle to access them. In remote rural areas of Syria and Iraq, where conflict has damaged infrastructure and restricted mobility, farmers often rely solely on traditional tools and limited resources. For them, adaptation becomes a matter of survival, requiring creativity and resilience rather than technological investment. Some of these communities revive centuries-old techniques that require no modern machinery, using straw mulch to retain soil moisture, planting windbreaks to shield fields from sandstorms, rotating crops to maintain soil fertility. These methods, though simple, provide stability in environments where complexity is a luxury. The role of traditional knowledge becomes increasingly important in this context. Elders remember planting cycles that predate modern calendars, observing signs in the landscape that signal seasonal shifts. They recognize subtle changes in wind direction, bird migration, or the flowering of certain plants, indicators that help determine when to sow or harvest. This knowledge passed down through generations becomes a valuable resource when technology is unavailable or unreliable. Younger farmers, once inclined to dismiss these old methods, now rediscover their relevance, realizing that sustainability often lies in practices rooted in long-term observation.
However, traditional knowledge alone cannot solve the systemic challenges facing the region. Climate change creates conditions outside the range of historical experience, requiring innovations that go beyond ancestral practices. This is where the integration of modern climate science becomes essential. Meteorologists reconstruct historical climate patterns to project future scenarios, helping governments plan agricultural zones that align with expected temperatures and rainfall. These projections influence decisions about which crops to promote, where to invest in irrigation infrastructure, and how to allocate water resources equitably among communities. Governments are slowly recognizing that agricultural resilience is not solely an environmental issue, but a national security priority. Food shortages fuel social unrest, and the migration of rural populations towards cities strains economic systems already under pressure. In response, several countries are developing national strategies focused on sustainable farming. Turkey encourages conservation agriculture, Iran promotes water-saving technologies, and Iraq invests in restoring marshes that act as natural climate buffers. While the effectiveness of these initiatives varies, they represent a growing awareness that the future of agriculture requires coordinated action rather than isolated efforts. International organizations also play a role, offering financial and technical assistance to vulnerable communities. Programs funded by global climate funds support small-scale irrigation projects, distribute drought-resistant seeds, and train farmers in climate-smart agriculture. These initiatives help bridge gaps between scientific research and practical application. Yet external support must be sensitive to local culture, traditions, and political contexts. Solutions imposed without community involvement often fail, while those built on local participation endure. This realization has shifted development strategies toward participatory models, where farmers are not merely recipients of aid, but active contributors to the design and implementation of solutions. Environmental restoration emerges as a crucial aspect of long-term resilience.
Centuries of cultivation, deforestation, and overgrazing have degraded large areas of the Fertile Crescent. Restoring vegetation through reforestation and sustainable grazing improves soil stability, enhances carbon storage, and moderates local climate. In the Kurdistan region, community-led tree planting projects aim to revive degraded hillsides. In parts of Syria, farmers plant native shrubs to prevent soil erosion and provide natural fodder for livestock. These efforts, though slow, contribute to rebuilding ecosystems that support agriculture.
Wetland restoration gains special attention due to its profound impact on water cycles. The Mesopotamian marshes of Iraq, once nearly destroyed by drainage projects, are gradually recovering through restoration initiatives. These wetlands function as natural sponges, absorbing floodwater and releasing it slowly during dry periods. They support diverse plant and animal species, improve water quality, and offer livelihoods through fishing and sustainable tourism. Their revival symbolizes a broader hope. The damaged landscapes can heal when given time, resources, and community dedication. Yet the challenges of climate change also require adaptation beyond the physical environment. Farmers must learn new business models to cope with uncertainties. Some shift to high-value crops like dates, pomegranates, or herbs that fetch better prices in local markets, offsetting yield losses caused by climate stress. Others explore agro-processing, turning tomatoes into paste, milk into cheese, to add value before selling. These economic adaptations help stabilize incomes even when harvests fluctuate. Cooperative farming structures also grow in importance, as shared resources reduce costs and spread risk across multiple families. As the region adapts, cultural identity evolves alongside agricultural practices. Festivals celebrating harvest seasons now incorporate discussions on climate resilience, linking tradition with modern awareness. Schools introduce agricultural education, encouraging children to understand both the science and heritage of farming. Community gatherings become forums for exchanging experiences, successes and failures alike, strengthening collective resilience. Through these interactions, the spirit of the Fertile Crescent continues to grow, rooted not only in its historical legacy, but in the shared commitment of its people to endure and adapt. In this unfolding narrative, agriculture becomes a lens through which the region redefines its relationship with nature. No longer seen merely as a provider of food, the land becomes a partner, one that demands care, patience, and mutual respect. Climate change tests this relationship, but it also deepens it, forcing communities to rethink how they interact with the environment. This evolving bond reflects the resilience of a region that has endured countless transformations over thousands of years. Even as challenges multiply, the Fertile Crescent continues to produce stories of ingenuity, cooperation, and hope. Each adaptation, whether scientific, social, or cultural, adds to a growing mosaic of resilience. Together, these pieces form a foundation upon which the future can be built. A future where agriculture remains not only possible, but thriving despite the uncertainties ahead. The land that once gave birth to civilization now enters a new chapter, guided by the determination of those who refuse to let its legacy fade.
As the Fertile Crescent enters deeper into the era of climate uncertainty, the question of resilience increasingly shifts from fields and rivers to the broader systems that sustain rural life. Agriculture, after all, is not only about plants and soil. It is also about the networks of trade, governance, knowledge sharing, and social cohesion that make farming viable. When these systems weaken, even the most fertile land can become unproductive. Thus, understanding the region's future means exploring how agricultural communities adapt socially, economically, and politically to the pressures shaping their world. The challenges are vast, but so is the persistence of the people who inhabit this ancient landscape. In many villages, the first sign of change emerges not in the fields, but in the rhythms of daily life. Households that once relied on multi-generational labor now find their younger members drawn to cities, where economic opportunities seem more promising. Urban centers expand while rural villages shrink, leaving an aging population to manage farms that require younger hands. This demographic shift strains agriculture, for experience alone cannot compensate for dwindling manpower. Yet some communities push back against this trend. Local leaders organize agricultural training programs to encourage young people to remain connected to the land, blending modern technology with traditional knowledge to make farming more attractive. Digital literacy classes teach youth how to use apps for weather monitoring, market prices, or irrigation control, demonstrating that agriculture can be both innovative and economically viable. Markets, too, undergo transformation as climate impacts influence supply chains. Transportation routes affected by conflict or extreme weather disrupt the movement of goods, increasing the cost of delivering produce to urban markets. Farmers must navigate fluctuating prices, uncertain demand, and competition from imported products. In response, some communities form cooperatives to negotiate better prices and share transportation costs. These cooperatives strengthen social bonds while providing financial stability. They also give farmers a collective voice, allowing them to advocate for better infrastructure, fair regulations, and access to credit. In an era when individual farmers are vulnerable, collective action becomes essential for survival.
Government policy plays an increasingly influential role in shaping agricultural resilience. Some states implement subsidies to encourage the adoption of drought-resistant crops or modern irrigation systems. Others offer training programs that promote sustainable land management. However, the effectiveness of these initiatives varies widely. In certain regions, bureaucratic hurdles, corruption, or weak governance hinder progress. Farmers may struggle to access subsidies, or they may receive seeds unsuited to their local conditions. These shortcomings highlight the need for policies designed through direct dialogue with rural communities, rather than imposed from distant administrative offices. When farmers are included in decision-making, policies become more grounded in reality and more likely to succeed. Water governance is perhaps the most critical political issue. The rivers that sustain the Fertile Crescent do not respect borders, and disputes over their use have intensified as flows diminish. Upstream dam construction can drastically reduce water availability downstream, fueling tensions between neighboring countries. Diplomatic negotiations become essential to prevent conflict and ensure equitable distribution. Regional organizations and international mediators work to establish cooperative frameworks that balance agricultural needs with urban consumption, industrial use, and environmental protection. While progress is uneven, the recognition that water scarcity threatens stability as much as it threatens agriculture encourages governments to seek common ground. Community-led water management initiatives demonstrate that effective governance does not always require large institutions. In parts of Iraq and Iran, local water user associations determine how to allocate irrigation water among farmers. Members meet weekly to evaluate field conditions, rainfall, and river flow, making decisions that reflect real-time needs. These associations promote accountability and prevent disputes, proving that grassroots governance can complement national policy. They also revive older traditions of communal water management, reinforcing cultural continuity in the face of modern challenges. Alongside social and political adaptations, environmental stewardship becomes a central theme. The land, weakened by degraded soils, disappearing vegetation, and declining biodiversity, needs restoration to remain productive. Communities adopt agroecological principles, integrating natural processes into farming. Crop diversification reduces vulnerability to pests and extreme weather. Intercropping, growing complementary crops together, helps maintain soil structure and fertility. Organic fertilizers derived from compost or animal manure restore nutrients without harming the environment. These practices represent a shift away from chemically intensive methods that, while once effective, have proven unsustainable under changing climatic conditions.
Innovation plays a vital role in this transition. Researchers and engineers design affordable sensors to monitor soil moisture, pH, and nutrient levels, allowing farmers to manage their fields with precision. Greenhouse systems, adapted to local climates, enable year-round cultivation using minimal water. Hydroponic and aquaponic installations appear in urban and peri-urban areas, producing vegetables in environments where traditional farming is impossible. These systems use significantly less water than soil-based agriculture and offer new economic opportunities for households with limited land. The region's agricultural landscape becomes more diverse, incorporating both traditional fields and high-tech systems. But technology alone cannot solve the deeper issue of ecological degradation. Forests in many areas have been reduced by decades of logging, grazing, and conflict. Reforestation emerges as a long-term solution to stabilize the environment, improve rainfall patterns, and protect soil. Communities organize planting campaigns, often focused on native species adapted to local climates. School children participate in tree planting drives, linking environmental stewardship to education and civic responsibility. These efforts inspire a new generation to value the land not only as a source of livelihood, but also as a shared inheritance that must be protected. Wetlands and riverine ecosystems receive renewed attention as natural allies in the fight against climate change. Their restoration helps regulate water cycles, prevent floods, filter pollutants, and support biodiversity. The partial revival of the Mesopotamian marshes offers a model for how degraded ecosystems can be brought back to life through coordinated action. Local marsh Arab communities, long displaced by environmental destruction, regain access to traditional livelihoods, such as fishing, reed harvesting, and buffalo grazing. Their cultural heritage becomes intertwined with ecological restoration, demonstrating that environmental health and social identity are inseparable. Cultural resilience becomes a recurring theme as the region adapts to climate change. The Fertile Crescent is not only a geographical space, but also a mosaic of traditions, languages, cuisines, and rituals, shaped by thousands of years of agricultural life. Seasonal celebrations reflect the cycles of planting and harvest. Stories passed down through generations embed environmental wisdom within cultural memory. As climate change reshapes these cycles, communities reinterpret their traditions, ensuring they remain relevant. Festivals incorporate themes of sustainability, while local songs and stories evolve to reflect contemporary challenges. This cultural adaptation reinforces community cohesion, strengthening the social foundation needed for resilience. Education emerges as a powerful catalyst for transformation. Schools introduce environmental science and agricultural studies into their curricula, helping students understand climate dynamics from an early age. Universities establish research partnerships with international institutions, bringing new knowledge and resources into the region. Online learning platforms allow rural students to access educational materials that once required travel to distant cities. These initiatives cultivate a generation that is both scientifically informed and deeply connected to its cultural roots, equipped to lead the region through future challenges. Migration remains a complex issue intertwined with climate change. As some areas become less viable for agriculture, families are forced to relocate in search of stability. This movement reshapes demographic patterns, creating new communities while dissolving old ones. Yet migration is not always a sign of defeat. In some cases, it becomes a strategy for adaptation. Families spread their members across different regions or occupations, diversifying income sources to reduce risk. Remittances from urban workers support rural households, enabling them to invest in new agricultural techniques or withstand difficult seasons. Thus, mobility becomes a form of resilience, reflecting the region's long history of movement and exchange. Despite all these adaptations, the psychological burden of climate change weighs heavily on rural residents. Watching a once fertile field crumble under drought or seeing a river reduced to a thin trickle affects more than economics. It affects identity and emotional well-being. Farming is not simply a job. It is a way of life, intimately connected to the land. When the land suffers, people experience grief, uncertainty, and anxiety. Community support networks, religious institutions, and family bonds provide emotional resilience, helping individuals persevere in the face of adversity. Mental health, often overlooked in discussions about climate change, becomes a crucial component of agricultural sustainability. Through all these transformations, the region holds on to a profound truth. Resilience is not a destination, but a continuous process. Communities do not adapt once, they adapt repeatedly, responding to new challenges with creativity, cooperation, and courage. The Fertile Crescent has survived droughts, floods, empires, and wars throughout its long history. Each era introduced hardships that seemed insurmountable at the time, yet the region endured. Climate change presents one of the greatest challenges yet, but the spirit of resilience remains strong. What emerges from these efforts is not a single model of adaptation, but a tapestry of interconnected strategies. Scientific innovation, traditional knowledge, political cooperation, environmental restoration, economic reform, and cultural renewal. Together, they form a holistic approach capable of guiding the Fertile Crescent through the uncertainties ahead. The land that once gave birth to agriculture now becomes a laboratory for its reinvention. The people who inherited this ancient legacy embrace both heritage and innovation, weaving them into a future that honors the past while confronting the realities of the present. As the Fertile Crescent continues to navigate the pressures of a warming climate, a broader realization begins to take hold across the region. Long-term resilience will depend not only on local adaptation, but also on the ability of communities, governments, and global partners to think beyond immediate challenges. Agriculture has always required planning, patience, and foresight, but the scale of change now unfolding demands a deeper level of coordination, one that transcends borders, generations, and traditional practices. In this new era, imagining the future becomes as essential as responding to the present. Across the region, conversations grow more urgent about what farming will look like in 20 or 50 years. The concerns are not abstract. Every season brings new reminders of how fragile the food system can be. Crops that flourish one year may fail the next. Rivers that once sustained entire provinces may run dangerously low. Communities that have depended on the same planting rhythms for centuries now find themselves adjusting constantly. These experiences underscore the need for long-term planning that anticipates climate trends, rather than simply reacting to them. Scientists contribute to this planning by developing detailed climate projections. Their models examine likely temperature increases, rainfall variations, and the frequency of extreme weather events. The results reveal a future that will require significant adjustments. Summers will grow hotter, winters shorter, and rainfall more erratic. Some regions may become unsuitable for traditional crops, while others could emerge as new agricultural zones. Based on these predictions, agricultural ministries begin mapping zones of vulnerability and potential opportunity. These maps guide decisions about where to invest in irrigation infrastructure, where to promote drought-resilient crops, and where to support alternative livelihoods for communities at risk of losing their farms. At the same time, global conversations influence regional strategies. International organizations emphasize the importance of climate-smart agriculture, an approach that enhances productivity, strengthens resilience, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. The Fertile Crescent becomes a focal point of these discussions due to its historical significance and current vulnerability. Funding flows into research projects, pilot programs, and training initiatives that aim to demonstrate practical solutions. While not every project succeeds, the cumulative knowledge provides a foundation for scalable adaptation.
One of the most forward-looking developments is the rise of regional knowledge networks. These networks bring together researchers, farmers, government officials, and non-governmental organizations to share information across borders. A breakthrough in irrigation efficiency in Turkey might quickly be studied and applied in Syria. A successful soil restoration technique in Iran could inspire similar efforts in Iraq. These networks reduce isolation and foster a sense of shared purpose, reminding participants that climate change does not recognize boundaries. When countries collaborate, they multiply their capacity to respond effectively. Another important trend shaping the future is the increasing emphasis on food security. As climate impacts grow more apparent, governments recognize that dependence on imports exposes populations to risks beyond environmental change, such as global market instability or geopolitical tensions. This awareness prompts investments in strengthening domestic food production. Countries explore strategies like expanding greenhouse agriculture, supporting small-scale producers, and modernizing storage facilities to reduce post-harvest losses. These efforts aim not only to increase production, but also to ensure stability, even when external conditions fluctuate. One key area of innovation lies in controlled environment agriculture, which includes greenhouses, vertical farms, and climate-regulated growing systems. These methods allow farmers to produce vegetables and herbs regardless of outdoor conditions. They use less water than open field agriculture and can be integrated into urban environments where land is scarce. Across Iraq and Iran, clusters of greenhouse enterprises emerge, offering steady supplies of tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, and other crops that are sensitive to climate variability. These enterprises create jobs and provide fresh produce to cities, reducing pressure on rural fields and offering new economic pathways for youth. But while technology can enhance production, it must be matched with efforts to protect natural resources. Soil health becomes a central concern as scientists warn that degraded soil cannot support long-term farming. Programs promoting regenerative agriculture gain momentum. Farmers are encouraged to reduce tillage, increase organic matter, and maintain continuous ground cover to prevent erosion. Cover crops, such as clover or vetch, enrich the soil during off-seasons. Composting programs turn agricultural waste into valuable fertilizer. These practices gradually restore soil structure, improving both productivity and resilience to drought. Water conservation also remains a pressing priority. As competition for water intensifies, efficiency becomes essential. Farmers who once irrigated fields manually now adopt automated drip systems equipped with moisture sensors. These systems release water only when the soil needs it, preventing both over-irrigation and waste. Researchers investigate new desalination technologies to make brackish water usable for agriculture. Though energy-intensive, advancements in renewable energy, particularly solar power, reduce operational costs, making desalination a more feasible option in the future.
As adaptation strategies expand, so too do the conversations about justice and equity. Climate change does not affect all communities equally. Wealthier farmers can afford new technologies, diversified crops, and protective infrastructure. Poorer households face fewer options and greater risks. Recognizing this disparity, development programs increasingly target marginalized groups, smallholder farmers, women, and displaced families, who are most vulnerable to climate impacts. Training programs prioritize inclusivity, ensuring that knowledge reaches those who need it most. Social protection measures, such as disaster relief funds or emergency food reserves, offer a safety net during extreme events. The importance of cultural heritage becomes more prominent as well. Agricultural traditions in the Fertile Crescent are not merely practical, they were expressions of identity, spirituality, and community. Losing these traditions would mean losing a vital part of the region's history. For this reason, many communities seek to preserve traditional crop varieties, irrigation rituals, and food practices, even as they adopt modern techniques. Festivals celebrating sowing and harvest continue, though adapted to reflect new realities. Traditional dishes made from ancient grains gain renewed interest as people rediscover their nutritional value and climate resilience. Elders pass down stories about the land, ensuring that younger generations understand their connection to it. However, cultural preservation does not imply resistance to change. Rather, it creates a foundation upon which change becomes meaningful. When farmers see adaptation as a continuation of their heritage rather than a departure from it, they embrace new practices more readily. This blending of past and present strengthens social cohesion,
allowing communities to navigate uncertainty with confidence rooted in continuity. One of the most compelling elements of the region's transformation is the rise of climate leadership from within local communities. Farmers who successfully implement resilient strategies often become mentors, sharing their experiences with neighboring villages. Women who lead household gardens teach others about efficient water use. Youth who return from universities with technical training help modernize community irrigation systems. These grassroots leaders illustrate that resilience is not imposed from above, but cultivated from within. Their stories inspire others, showing that change is possible even in the face of overwhelming challenges. The next generation plays a particularly important role in shaping the region's future. Young people are increasingly aware of environmental issues, thanks in part to social media and digital learning platforms. They engage in discussions about sustainability, renewable energy, and ecological protection. Some pursue studies in agriculture, environmental science, or engineering with the explicit goal of contributing to climate resilience. Others become entrepreneurs, developing startups focused on smart irrigation systems, organic fertilizers, or low-cost greenhouse designs. Their creativity injects new energy into a sector often perceived as traditional and unchanging.
Nevertheless, the road ahead remains uncertain. Climate models indicate that the region will continue to face harsh conditions. Heat waves will become more frequent, droughts longer, and rainfall patterns more volatile. These projections underscore the need for continuous innovation and adaptation. The Fertile Crescent cannot rely on a single solution. It must cultivate a flexible mindset capable of adjusting to evolving circumstances. This mindset, rooted in the region's long history of resilience, becomes its most valuable asset. Looking toward the future, a vision begins to emerge of an agricultural system that is more diversified, efficient, and sustainable than the one inherited from the past. Fields may no longer depend solely on river irrigation, but draw from a combination of rainwater harvesting, groundwater recharge, and recycled wastewater. Crops may include both traditional staples and new varieties engineered for resilience. Farms may integrate renewable energy systems, reducing dependence on costly fuel. Rural communities may thrive not only through farming, but also through agro-processing, ecotourism, and climate-related services. These possibilities reflect a broader transformation, the understanding that agriculture is not merely about surviving climate change, but adapting in a way that strengthens society. The Fertile Crescent has always been a cradle of innovation, from the first domesticated grains to early irrigation systems. Today, it stands poised to pioneer a new era of sustainable farming that honors tradition while embracing the future. If the region can harness its collective wisdom, invest in long-term resilience, and nurture the creativity of its people, it may once again serve as a model for the world, a testament to what humanity can achieve when it works in harmony with nature.
As the Fertile Crescent moves deeper into an era shaped by climate uncertainty, a quiet but profound transformation begins to take place. One that is less visible than new irrigation systems, less measurable than crop yields, but essential to the survival of the region. It is a transformation rooted in mindset, in the growing recognition that resilience is not merely a set of techniques or technologies, but a philosophy, a way of seeing the land and understanding humanity's place within a changing world. This philosophical shift becomes the final thread weaving together the many adaptations unfolding across the region. This new awareness emerges first in conversations, between farmers discussing unpredictable weather, between researchers comparing data across borders, between young students questioning the future they will inherit. These conversations reveal a shared truth. Climate change is not a temporary hardship, but a permanent feature of the landscape.
Just as ancient communities learned to read the rivers and seasons, modern societies must learn to read the patterns of climate. This requires not only scientific knowledge, but emotional resilience and collective imagination, the ability to envision futures shaped by choices made today. Farmers, more than anyone, understand the urgency of this shift. They have lived through seasons that defied expectation, fields that bore little resemblance to their memories, and rivers that behaved as strangers. Yet in these uncertainties, they discovered a capacity for adaptation that had lain dormant, overshadowed by decades of routine. No longer bound to traditions simply because they are old, farmers now evaluate them through the lens of practicality and survival. They embrace what works, discard what does not, and remain open to experimentation. This willingness to evolve becomes a quiet revolution, reshaping the agricultural identity of the Fertile Crescent. Communities across the region begin to recognize the power of collective knowledge. No farmer faces climate change alone. Each failure and success contributes to a shared pool of experience that strengthens everyone. Farmers' associations host gatherings where participants exchange insights on planting dates, soil treatments, pest patterns, and new crop varieties. Researchers attend these sessions, listening as much as they speak, learning from the accumulated wisdom of people who observe the land with unmatched intimacy. These exchanges break down hierarchical barriers, creating a more democratic system of knowledge that values field-tested experience alongside scientific research. Beyond the villages, national and regional institutions gradually adopt a long-term perspective on agricultural planning. Instead of reacting to crop failures with temporary relief programs, policymakers invest in structural reforms, modernizing irrigation networks, training agricultural extension workers, updating climate models, and building seed banks that preserve genetic diversity. These steps may not solve immediate problems, but they form the backbone of future resilience. Governments acknowledge that ensuring food security in a warming climate requires more than increasing production. It requires strengthening the system that supports farmers in every aspect of their work, from land rights to market access to environmental protection.
Increasingly, the concept of sustainability takes center stage. Communities begin to understand that resilience cannot exist without environmental balance. Over-irrigation that depletes aquifers, chemical fertilizers that degrade soil, deforestation that removes natural buffers, and unsupervised grazing that destroys vegetation. All these practices, once overlooked, now inspire concern. The region gradually transitions toward approaches that respect ecological limits. Sustainable grazing plans help restore pasture lands. Incentives encourage farmers to reduce chemical dependency and adopt organic amendments. Protected areas are established to preserve native biodiversity and safeguard watersheds. These environmental efforts not only support agriculture, but revive ecosystems linked to cultural identity and historical continuity. Meanwhile, the region's youth play an increasingly central role in shaping the new agricultural paradigm. Many young people who once viewed farming as outdated begin to see it as a field rich with innovation and purpose. They bring in new perspectives informed by global knowledge, technology, and environmental consciousness. Some join startups developing low-cost drip systems or climate monitoring devices designed specifically for small farmers. Others create online platforms that connect rural producers to urban consumers, reducing dependence on traditional middlemen and expanding market opportunities. Schools integrate ecological education into their curricula, nurturing generations that understand the profound connection between environmental stewardship and societal stability. The cultural renewal that accompanies this transformation becomes one of the most unexpected but powerful outcomes of the region's climate journey. Long-forgotten agricultural rituals return with new meaning. Traditional songs celebrating the harvest are sung at gatherings focused on sustainable practices. Families revive heirloom recipes made from ancient grains, restoring both flavor and biodiversity to local cuisine. Artists paint landscapes that portray not only the beauty of the land, but also the struggle to protect it. Poets draw metaphors from rivers, droughts, and seeds, expressing a collective emotional response to the changing climate. Through these creative expressions, the region reaffirms its identity, reminding its people that they are part of a continuum stretching back thousands of years. Migration, once seen solely as a sign of decline, acquires new dimensions. Some families move temporarily during drought years, working in industries that help stabilize household income before returning to the land when conditions improve. Others send one or two members to cities or abroad, creating diversified economic networks that act as buffers against climate shocks. These patterns reflect adaptive mobility rather than abandonment. Just as ancient pastoralists moved with the seasons, modern families navigate shifting economic and environmental landscapes with strategic flexibility. Remittances from migrant workers support investments in irrigation equipment, greenhouses, and education, linking global mobility to local resilience.
Despite progress, the psychological weight of climate uncertainty remains profound. Farmers grapple with the emotional challenge of watching landscapes they have loved since childhood undergo visible transformation. A river runs lower than it did in their grandparents' time. A field that once yielded plentiful harvests now struggles to produce enough for sustenance. Yet, within this emotional struggle emerges a deeper sense of purpose. Many farmers come to see themselves as custodians of a heritage that must be preserved, not only for economic survival, but for cultural continuity. This sense of guardianship strengthens resolve and motivates collective action. Regional cooperation becomes increasingly essential. Countries that once viewed water as a point of contention gradually begin to see it as a shared responsibility. Joint monitoring of rivers, shared climatic data, cross-border seed conservation, and collaborative environmental restoration projects become stepping stones toward stability. While political tensions persist, pragmatic recognition of mutual vulnerability encourages dialogue. Scientists call for basin-wide water agreements that consider ecological flows rather than purely political interests. Environmental activists advocate for unified climate strategies, arguing that no single nation can safeguard its future without coordinating with its neighbors. Global partnerships complement these regional efforts. International climate funds invest in infrastructure designed to withstand extreme weather. Humanitarian organizations support vulnerable communities facing crop failures. Technical experts from around the world collaborate with local researchers to develop new crop varieties suited to future climates. At the same time, global audiences learn from the resilience of the Fertile Crescent, recognizing that the region that once pioneered agriculture may again lead the way in adapting farming to a changing planet. All these developments point toward a profound reimagining of the relationship between people and land. The Fertile Crescent, long celebrated as the cradle of civilization, becomes a classroom for the world, a place where ancient wisdom, scientific innovation, and cultural resilience converge to form a blueprint for agricultural survival under climate stress. The region's story demonstrates that adaptation is not merely a technical adjustment, but a holistic process, touching every aspect of life: food, identity, economy, governance, and community.
As this final chapter unfolds, the region's people stand with a deeper understanding of what it means to cultivate resilience. They know that climate change cannot be reversed overnight, and that its effects will intensify in the coming decades. But they also know that they are not powerless. Every seed planted in dry soil, every canal repaired, every innovation tested, every tree planted, every lesson shared contributes to a collective strength that cannot be measured in statistics. The future of the Fertile Crescent will be neither a return to the past nor a surrender to despair. Instead, it will be a continuation of a story thousands of years in the making, one defined not by perfect conditions, but by human ingenuity in the face of challenge. the land that nurtured the first farmers still holds potential, not in its ancient fertility alone, but in the resilience of the people who refuse to let its legacy fade. And so, the narrative concludes not with an ending, but with an invitation to keep learning, adapting, restoring, imagining, and cultivating hope. The Fertile Crescent remains a symbol of beginnings. Even in a changing climate, it continues to remind humanity that survival is possible when people and land evolve together, guided by wisdom, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the future.